I've been learning. Shari Moyadim. I realized after I gave the class yesterday, I don't think I wasn't satisfied in my explaining the point well enough. It just came to me afterwards. We had a difficulty in the Megillah, the story of Purim, that the beginning of the story starts with a party that King Achashvrosh is making. And it's elaborate. What do we need to know about the elaborate party that he made? Furthermore, what do we even need to know that he was a king from Haidu until Kush? 127 provinces that he was a ruler over, fine. We got that. But what do I need to know more than that? Was some of the questions that we asked. Because it doesn't seem to fit with the narrative. That the real question, the question was, the narrative of the gist of the story is about a decree against the Jewish people and the salvation of the Jewish people. Period. Right? So making the party and that your kingship was, so big and extended from Haidu until Kush, all these things from Ethiopia to India. What was the necessity of giving us an elaborate explanation? So we went to explain that, when you look at life, we have a big question. And the big question is, if we live a purposeful life, a meaningful life, a life that's dedicated to, to changing the world for good, think about your day and not the usage of your day as much as how God made our day. He makes our day in such a way that there's 8 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep, that you got to spend time making food, to eat food. You've got a lot of things that are seemingly not connected or at least directly relevant to the purpose of your life, of changing this world for good, right? Furthermore, we come into this world, this first years, were years that, what are we contributing? What are we doing? We're not like a colt that is born and, in the first few hours, it's already running off on its own and being able to take care of itself. That's not the way the human condition is. Which, by the way, parenthetically, one of the reasons why evolution is not the truth. We devolved, not evolved, right? What do you mean? The colt is able to, in a few hours, take care of itself, and we devolved to become human beings from, from the monkey, the chimpanzee. That they were also became, self-sufficient very quickly, and here we devolved, and it takes us, for some of us, 25 years until we get a job. And we're self-sufficient, right? Some of us, might be still in school and dependent on others, right? And so we devolved, not evolved. So it's not evolution, it's devolution. But anyways, I have many more reasons why evolution is not the truth, but not for now. So the point being, though, that God sets up the world, it seems like there's so many things that are not connected to, meaningful, purposeful life. And it's just, by the by. But at the end, we know, because we're believers and know that Hashem, everything is meaningful, everything is purposeful. So every detail has to be part of the greater plan, right? So the Rebbe explains that, yes, every detail is part of a greater plan in the story of the Megillah. How so? Because the fact that Achashvrosh was such a, what's the word I'm looking? He was able to bring different types and elements of society under his rulership, that they would be completely given over to anything and everything that he wants. That's Hoidu and Kush, as we said, the upright people to the to those who were, you know, distant and far off individuals, and he was able to, I don't know if I don't know if it's the charisma, I don't know what it is, the quality, but he had the capacity that he could be able to take disparate types of nations and peoples and bring them all together. Where did he do that? By the festive celebration. He won them over. So much so that now we can understand how this is part of the story. That when he makes a decree against the Jewish people, based on Haman, of course, that, you know, came to him to make the decree, all of the nations, 127 nations, followed gladly. They felt it an honor to be able to fulfill any of his dictates. Why? Because when they came to his party for 180 days, he took care of them and was showering them with anything and everything, each person according to their needs. And they felt it a great honor to be there. They felt it a great honor. That honor extended, and that was several years, by the way. That was several years before Haman came. I don't remember the exact amount of years. I don't know, it was 5 years, 7 years. It was several years until Haman came afterwards. But what he had created was a following of people who were honored by his, by his glory, by his power, by him bringing them into, so to speak, I don't know if the inner circle is the right term, but making a party for such a long period where they all felt honored to be there. When the decree came, it was going to be fulfilled, and they were going to fulfill it gladly to destroy every single Jew from child to adult. So that becomes an important element, which, by the way, I gave the example, if you remember yesterday, of Hitler, Yimach Shemai, may his name be obliterated, who is, people say, is a descendant of Haman. Haman is an Amaleki. They are Nazis, the Amalekis. I mean, we don't know for certain, but definitely have the qualities, which we are obliged to. I mean, we can't do it today because we don't know who is the Amalekis, but, you know, who are an evil incarnate that, you know, the only thing to do is destroy. And had that great capability of bringing together 80 million Germans and beyond the Germans in a hatred towards Jews, a commitment and to be their part of the Third Reich, and, you know, ultimately seeking to be the to create a 1,000-year reign of the Third Reich and everything that comes together with. So, by the way, it's an interesting discussion to have about another time. We'll have about this whole idea, how it fits in with Purim, with Amalek, and so on. Welcome, Sarah Malka, and welcome, David. So therefore, it becomes an integral part of the story to understand, you know, the evil plotting against the Jews didn't begin with an evil person by the name of Haman, who, you know, offered or gave 10,000 silver coins to the king so that his evil plot to destroy the Jewish people, to annihilate them, would be fulfilled. If you didn't have the culpability or the buy-in of 127 provinces that are disparate, one from the other in their culture, in their nature, in their way, and their path. But in one thing that they were together as one is that they were honored to be part of King Achashvrosh's, royal party, part of his royal nation, and whatever his dictate would be, when indeed the decree would be sent, they would be only but too happy to fulfill it. Which, teaches us another important lesson that, if you don't have, it's like, you have an evil person, but if you don't have the backing, you don't have the support system to go to with that evil person's intent, you're not going to be able to fulfill what you want to fulfill, right? So here, what the Rebbe is showing is that seemingly a story that is just a sideline story about making a party is really integral to the entire story. So in conclusion, the Rebbe says for this is that this teaches us that in our lives, likewise, we have to be able to see that sometimes there are things that seemingly have nothing to do with my personal narrative, with my personal goals, with my personal mission that I need to fulfill. Well, if it's something that I chose, and maybe it's true, maybe I chose the wrong thing, and therefore, I'm responsible. But if it's something that came my way from heaven's hands, like the decree of heaven against the Jews by Haman, by Achashvrosh making a party, right? We need to know. We need to recognize that we're not discombobulated. We are one whole being. We have a one life, and all of the details, even though they sometimes do not seem to fit in this piece in the puzzle. I know something's wrong with this puzzle. It's a damaged piece. Send it back. No, your life, you don't have pieces in your puzzles that are damaged. They all are meant to fit in perfectly. And when we recognize and we are committed to the fact that, in fact, everything is meant to fit in perfectly, then what we'll do is fit it in and see how it's part of my life. That's one lesson that Rebbe says that we need to learn from this. Another lesson is, remember we mentioned, in our life as a child, that seemingly, such a long period of time that, is not really, of course it's important in the child upbringing, but, you're not really fulfilling your purpose then. So the attitude of many people, and in the previous generation, maybe some of us were raised that way, if we're more than 39, is children, when spoken to, speak. Otherwise, if you're not spoken to, you don't speak, right? In front of adults. Why? Because children are, of course, we love the children, but the children are there to ultimately become adults, ultimately become a mensch. But as a child, you're just a kid. You're just a kid. And, shashtil, be quiet, no opinion. And definitely, the previous generation, that's the notion. That was the attitude. Coming together with that attitude was, well, it's just a kid. So even to give them food that might not be 100% kosher, it's only a kid, right? When it's real, but, they're not obliged to keep kosher. Or even, there's a notion that Rebbe brings down in the Sikha, interesting, that even when you want to get a kid to do something like study Torah, maybe you have to tell them a lie to impress them, or or to bring them to something to go and study. After all, it's only a kid. It's only a kid. So Rebbe says, no, that's a mistake. What the Megillah is teaching us over here, that every detail of one's life, right, is a piece of the puzzle. If this piece of the puzzle actually might be a more valuable piece, because if you tell a white lie to the kid now, the kid will ultimately come to realize that, and might not be able to distinguish between, oh, you told a lie in order to try to motivate you to do something good. You didn't tell a lie for the sake of a lie, right? You didn't tell a lie, you're not allowed to do that. Bar sheker tirchak, you have to stay away from saying a lie. Torah tells us. For a kid, to get them to do something good, say, no, you could stretch it, you could tell white lie, and so on. And it's a kid anyways. So he says, no, it's a mistake. This is a piece of the puzzle of their life. And if that piece of the puzzle of their life, you are, telling them a lie, they may not be able to distinguish later on, between the white lie, between doing it for the good intent, for, trying to motivate someone to do a mitzvah, and just lying for your own sake, because for your own benefit, so to speak. So, but where does the problem come is when you look at the life of the child. How are you looking at the life of the child? As secondary. It's not a piece of the puzzle of their life, of an entire life. It is like, when you grow up, of course, we're going to have to deal with you properly. But, now you're just a kid, Speak when you're spoken to, and here the Megillah is telling us, no. Every detail of the Megillah is part of the story, is part of the narrative, and an essential part of the narrative. And that's why it's there. Same thing, every aspect of a person's life, it's part of the narrative, the book of our lives that's being written, even as a child. So therefore, don't look at a child in any other way, that this piece of the puzzle is, without this piece in the puzzle, we'll still be able to see the picture of what we're making over here. Mistake. Is that clear? That's the lesson. Okay, let's take another sikha that the Rebbe says, and answers this in a different manner. There's a Purim Fabringen. I think it was I don't know if it was 1974, if I remember correctly, or it was the early 70s, or somewhere in the early 70s, mid 70s. And Chaim Potek was at the Fabringen, the famous Jewish author. And so the Rebbe asked a question, why by the Megillah's Esther do we have the story of the party that Achashvrosh made, and the details of all the wealth that was displayed. Great wealth that was displayed at that party. Why do we need to know that? So our first answer that we just gave was because that was part of, the buy-in that the people had, and the honor that they felt, right? And therefore he was able to manipulate or control all of humanity at that time, the 127 provinces that he ruled, which is where all the Jews lived at the time, that ultimately would lead to the decree. That's what we just explained, right? Here the Rebbe gives a different explanation. And he says, Achashvrosh, the wealth that he had he made a party for not 180 days, but 50 days only, and he would have only shown some of the wealth, that would not be tsugapas, that wouldn't be appropriate, because such wealth, you got to display it and use it all out. What does this teach us? Every single person is created by God with wealth. We all have wealth. It may not be in the bank account, but it's in our neshama. It's in us. The wealth is in us. Some of us might be very kind. Some of us might be very smart. Some of us might be very compassionate. Some of us might do this mitzvah with davening with great kavana. We all have the wealth in our soul that we have been bestowed. Achashvrosh got great wealth, and he used it out completely. The same thing is with the wealth that we've been given. This is not the simple meaning, of course, of the story. This is probably more the homiletic, right? The drush, as opposed to the first explanation, was the simple understanding. Once we have the Hasidic perspective, this is expounding to us that we're all given wealth. God gives us wealth. As Achashvrosh is actually, by the way, interesting to note that Achashvrosh, the Talmud tells us, is Achris Bereshis Shaloi. The end and the beginning is his. Who's that? Anybody know who that is? Achris Bereshis Shaloi. It's like a play on his name. It's a play on his name, Achashvrosh. His end and his beginning is his. Who's that? I don't hear you, Diane.
God.
Of course. Who else? God. Exactly. Thank you. It's God. So the Gemara says, I think it's the Gemara. I don't know, maybe it's a Medrash, but it's from our sages, that the beginning and the end is his. That's only God. I don't have my beginning, right? I don't create my beginning. I was created, right? Only God creates his beginning and has his beginning, and his end is his, right? Belongs to him only. So it's in reference to God. So Achashvrosh, when you read the story on a different plane, there's reference to God. Anyway, we're not there's much on that, which maybe we'll deal with in another point. The point that I want to bring out over here is, where's wealth come from? God. The wealth comes from God. He gives us, each and every single one of us, wealth. He bestows upon us the honor and the glory. He makes the party. He gives us, bestows upon us, each person according to what they want. No one was forced to drink this or to eat that. Everybody got. There's even kosher food there, by the way, which we'll speak about that shortly. And so what do we take from this? Is that we're all given wealth, each according to whatever it is that God gives us, and that we need to use it out. Can't hold back that wealth. Achashvrosh, God didn't hold it back. Achashvrosh didn't. God doesn't hold it back. We've been given wealth. We gotta pay it forward. We gotta give it and use it totally. So you're someone who, everybody knows what their wealth is. Everybody knows what they have, something special and unique, a gift that God has given them. Don't praise yourself for it. Don't praise yourself for it, but use it out. Use it out totally. To the max. So the Rebbe touched that out by the Farbrengen, by that point Farbrengen. So someone was given a wealth of capability of writing and influencing people through their penmanship, that they have a way of expressing themselves. They need to use that fully to bring people closer to God, to bring people closer to goodness, to inspire and influence them for the better. Of course, he didn't point out to Chaim Potok, but everybody felt well, he's the good writer, not me. He's the wealthy one in penmanship. So of course, but of course, he's speaking to each and every one of us on our level of whatever it is, the wealth that we have. That's another. I mentioned, so that's another sikha. Now, another yet. I think we have time that we can do this one. So another sikha from the Rebbe that he quotes from the Gemara Megillah says, interesting. Why did the decree happen against the Jewish people? So the simple narrative is, of course, Haman hated Mordechai because he wouldn't bow down to him, and he found out that he's part of the Jewish people. So, really, this is a nation that is different and spread out, and they don't buy into our culture, and so hence came the decree. But as we know, I don't have to tell you at this point because we've learned enough, that there's nothing that happens down here that doesn't happen up there. The decree ultimately is a heavenly decree that devolves, right, into this world, that allows Haman to be able to do what he wants to do, right? But it's in heaven. So where did the heavenly decree begin? So the Gemara says, our sages teach us that that the Yidden, they are nehenu misudasei shel oisei rasha. They had pleasure from the festive meal, that party. Remember that party? 180 days from that evil Achashvrosh. So what does this mean exactly? Because they came to the party? They weren't punished for that. Why? Well, a non-Jew makes a party, so you have to run to the party? Well, they did. They had no choice. The king makes a party, and he's inviting you. You got to come, right? That's the, even though it's a non-Jewish king, an evil king, it doesn't matter, and say, oh, they ate at the party. They didn't eat kosher. No, there was kosher food at the party. So kosher food, they had to come because it was, the king is expecting you, that you're going to be there. Then by Jewish law, it's incumbent upon you, even though it's a non-Jewish king, but he is the ruler, and Dinah Malchus, the law of the land is the law, as long as it doesn't infringe on Jewish law. And it doesn't infringe on Jewish law going to the party. By the way, even if there was non-kosher food over there, you don't have to eat. You can just have a vodka on the rocks and say l'chaim, or I don't know if they had single malt then, but yeah. Oh, beer for sure. Yes, beer for sure. Right, so you didn't have to eat, but it didn't matter. There was kosher food. There was a kosher buffet. So it's not because they ate not kosher, which that itself then would be, because they ate non-kosher, God makes a decree. That sounds pretty harsh. So the truth is, Andrew, welcome.
It was because of their pride. That's what they were being punished for.
Yes, that
In other words, that
you're
they
warned.
say the
You're
American,
warned.
we raised our thoughts that we were almost, we didn't need God anymore, so to speak. We had reached the table, so to speak.
Yeah. So very good, Andrew. Very good. So the punishment is, and these are the words of Chazal, of the sages, right? Nehenu, they had pleasure, misudasai, from the festive meal of that wicked king. Pleasure. It's one thing that the king calls you.
It was also because he wanted to celebrate the fact that Hashem had not delivered them from their captivity to him, and they were celebrating this with him.
Yes. So Nanu means like this, that you're called to the king. Okay, so you got to go. But you go why? Because that's the law, the Jewish law. Halacha says you have to go. But to have pleasure from that evil, wicked king's honoring you, that's the problem. They felt honored. Oh, look at that. Justin Trudeau called me to what is it, 12 Rideau, or okay, maybe that's not an honor. But back in the day, Stephen Harper. Oh, Stephen Harper is like, but he's amazing. Or if, from America, I don't even want to go there. Right. Okay. Thomas Jefferson called you. George Washington called you to the White House. Oh my gosh. You feel good. Like you said, like Andrew said, pride, feeling pleasure from it. That, look how important I am. Look how valuable I am. What that statement is saying is as follows. I buy into the king that he is the one that will be my protectorate. After all, he's the king. And as Batya said and Andrew both said, that God is no longer my God. Not that they didn't believe in God, and not that they didn't pray maybe 3 times a day, and not that they didn't they kept kosher and they kept Shabbos and everything. We're talking about a religious person here, but they felt that we've got to throw our what's the word? We've got to throw ourselves behind the king, because after all, he is the king of 127 provinces. He is the king over every single Jew, living Jew now. And we need to be on his side. He needs to be on our side, right? But what that is saying in a very subtle manner, and this is subtle, it wasn't overt. Oh, we threw off God and we take now Achashvrosh. No, that's not what the words are saying. Nehenu. We took pride, we took pleasure in this. It's a subtle, very subtle idea that we kind of threw off, or we didn't have the same pleasure or the same sense of protection that God will provide. Not that we don't believe in God and God is going to protect us, but we're betting on both sides, so to speak. We're playing out on both sides in a sense. So what's wrong with that? Why would that create such a punishment? Like, God, oh, that's it? You want to go on their team, so you're not playing on my team? So, no, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. It says about the Jewish people that we are kivsa achas ben ayin ze'evim. We are one sheep among 70 wolves. 70 nations are 70 wolves. And all of them are out to what? Have lunch with the sheep, of you and I, the Jewish people. That's the nations of the world. You see it kind of today, what's going on with Israel. Even our friends, they're wolves. That's, even our friends. And by the way, even someone who did great things like, embassy in Jerusalem and so on and so forth, yes, don't have pleasure from it. Don't be proud of that. This is my king. Look what he's doing. He's my man. No, he's not. Yes, as I've said this before, when it comes to voting, we got to vote for what's good for the Yidden, what's good for the Jews. What's good for the Jews, not what is pleasurable and gives me pride and honor. No, it's not about, that's not where our pride and honor goes. That's not where our pleasure goes. Our pleasure goes in learning Torah. Our pleasure goes in doing a mitzvah. And our honor is to be a Jew and to be committed to God. That's our honor, period. Yeah, what's good for the Jews? So this one I think is better than that one. Okay, you think the other one's better than this one, whatever. But it doesn't go anywhere because I don't put my pride and joy there. I don't put my pleasure there. But the Jews did. The Jews did. They played identity politics. What does that do? What does that do? That means the one sheep that is being protected from the 70 wolves is only being protected because there is the ultimate shepherd, God Almighty, that's doing a miracle. They're keeping away those wolves, which is literally a miracle. How's it a miracle? Look, we're still here. We're still here. But you're choosing now not to go with the miracle, throwing your lot, and that's where your pride and your pleasure is? And you want to throw it through a human being, a king, strong king, evil one, mind you. But that's where you want to throw? So that means you don't want the shepherd. You're choosing not the shepherd. You're choosing one of those wolves. Well, the shepherd says, okay, I'll leave you to the wolves. And therefore, what happens when you're left to the wolves? A decree comes down on earth to devour and annihilate you. So it was a consequence of the actions of the Jews. It wasn't a punishment. I mean, it is punishing, but it's not a punishment. That's the story. So, of course, I don't have to tell you what we have to learn out from that, right? Yes, we have to pray for the welfare of our rulers, unless, they're evil. But then, even then, we do, because, the next ruler could be even more, vicious. Yes, we need to abide by the law of the land. And if that means you're called to come to the king, fine. You're not bragging about it. Now, if you're a chassid, so then you're going to use the occasion to try to take your values and your teachings and your what's the word I'm looking for? Your agenda, and try to bring it so you can influence and inspire others. But when you have pleasure from being called, so then of course what's going to happen, you're going to be influenced by their agenda. And their agenda will overtake you, rather than you coming with the agenda of Torah mitzvahs, Sheva mitzvahs, b'nei Noach, or whatever it is that you need to go with. And as a result, then we're under their thumb, which the rule of nature then will dictate, rather than we're under the authority of God and doing what God needs from us, and then miracles happen as a result. That's the story. Any questions? Any comments?
Well, everything everything emanates from the spiritual and comes to the physical here, but you can subvert it through mitzvah, charity, etc. I think there's the story of Rabbi Akiba's daughter
Yes.
had a
On her
decree
wedding day.
at our wedding day, and he had seen one of the seers who said she's going to die the next day. And when she didn't, he didn't understand why. And it turned out that she had set aside, 25% or 20% for those that were just invited to the wedding to eat. And during the night, the snake that had emanated from the spiritual into the physical, she took a nail and
No, she
nailed her
took from
wedding
her
dress
hair, her hairpin.
right into the wall and killed the snake. So by her acts of charity here, she subverted the spiritual down from
Exactly.
the physical.
So of course we can annul the decree. Absolutely, we can annul the decree, right? And that's ultimately what the Jews did. That's what Mordechai gathered the Jewish people together, and they recognized that this was a decree from heaven, and therefore, that was the fasting that Esther and her maidens and the Jewish people, conducted, and so on and so forth, because they recognize that, hey, but we'll go into that more. We'll discuss that more next week. But yep, thank you for sharing that. Beautiful. All right, folks, any other questions, comments? All right, amazing. Amazing. Folks, this yeshiva, I'm having lots of pleasure from it and pride. All right. Wishing everybody a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow, God willing. All the best. Be well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a fun.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.